Good evening and welcome to another edition of Press Club. I am your host this evening, Janan Gastor, sitting for Mr. Burton. With me again this evening is Mr. Earl Bousquet, who is slowly but surely creeping up into my likings. Good evening, Mr. Bousquet.
Good evening, Jenna.
And if you were tuned in to last week, you would know that I made a special request for Mr. Bousquet to wear his ice green and gold shades.
Yeah, I did remember.
They say ask for what
but
you
it's
want.
becoming part of my on-air
persona. Well, before the show finishes, I have a little surprise for you.
Okay.
And we'll
my
see.
Heart is beat steady. Has been beating steady for many moons. Hope it remains that way.
Earl has actually helped me a lot through the week. You know, I've gone to him on certain topics. I have spoken to him before and after the show, and for me, being very new in the industry, I really appreciate it. And I want to start by telling you thank you very much for helping me and guiding me along the way and giving me a few tips. I did get mixed reviews from last week's show, but which is expected.
That's what's good. That's what's good about it. You can't please everybody.
I clearly cannot.
But every one of the reviews came from somebody who watched and listened, and that's what it's about.
Viewership is what's important, right?
Including those who don't agree.
Including those. So this week, actually, I covered my shoulders for you, so I hope my coverage.
You're gonna disappoint a lot of people.
I hope my coverage doesn't offend you.
You're gonna disappoint even some colleagues.
Mr. President, in fact. Let's start this evening with our topics of today. Oh, where should we start? I want to start on a high note.
I'll start with you. Go ahead.
No wet fet, because we are in a water emergency. This has certainly disappointed a lot of the carnival goers and a lot of young people. People are saying that, you know, Wasco is unfair. They could have sold the water to the gentlemen. The gentlemen themselves are saying that Wasco told them they had to put in a 4 months prior application to bring in the water from Dominica. But what do you think that we should even be bringing in water for something like that, to irresponsible use of water? That's my opinion.
Well, first of all, Jenna, that is indeed one of my early topics for this evening. The whole issue of wet fet has to be seen within the context of when it is taking place. Good fet, bad time. From the standpoint that wet fet has scored for the last 8 years, it's never had a problem because we haven't been in the middle of, it hasn't been held in the middle of a water emergency. And that is the issue here, not availability of water. Wasco hasn't said it doesn't have water. When Wasco explains the water situation, it is having problems in ensuring that it can maintain the water levels that it has beyond an undetermined period, and that is why therefore it has to do all it can to desilt the dam, to repair the pipes, to ensure that during what's left of the drought and beyond that it will have water. So subject to correction, I'll just use graphic figures to remember what Mr. Vincent Hippolyte explained at the time when the water emergency was declared. And that is basically that if Wasco is required to secure 1 million gallons per day, it has that capacity, but now it is at 600,000. And therefore, in order to ensure that it doesn't deplete too faster than it can be refilled, we have to conserve. And it is in that context that the National Water Commission, not Wasco, decided that it would not give a license for what would end up to be, in the context of a national water emergency, irresponsible use of water. And it's not about Wasco not having water. Even thinking of importing water to have the wet fet and then selling the rest of the water to Wasco exhibits a lack of understanding of what Wasco is and what its what its responsibility is. WASCO is in the business of manufacturing water and selling it, not buying.
But the gentleman has given his economic benefits to having the party. So water is, do you still bracket it as the indiscriminate use of water?
Yes, I do, because in pursuit of profit, I mean, it's true, profit making is free enterprise. In pursuit of profits, there has to be, people have a right to make money. But sometimes you have to be responsible about how you go about making money. And let me give you an indication as to why it will be irresponsible of us to exploit our access to water. We are so accessible to water. We grew up knowing that every time we open the pipe there will be water. You know, and if we don't have it for a few hours. But there are countries and places where people have no access to water.
Yes.
There are places where people have access to only dirty water.
Well, I know in Puerto Rico.
I did collect some facts from the United Nations on World Water Day, which was celebrated earlier this year. And it says here, I'll give you just a few facts about it. It says that as we speak right now, 394 million people in Latin America and the Caribbean are without water access. 358 million people in Africa are without water access. 195 million people in Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Oceania are without water access. And this one is interesting. 9 million people are without water access in developed countries. United Kingdom, sorry, Europe, United States, Canada. 9 million vis-a-vis 394 plus 358, 1 point something billion poor people do not have access to water. Now, what are the consequences? More than 840,000 people die from a water-related disease every year. And that could be from diarrhea caused by dirty drinking water, drinking dirty water, hygiene and sanitation. And that translates to 2,300 deaths per day. So that is what is happening in places where there isn't water, General. And we have water, not that we don't have, we're surrounded by water, but what we want to do is to feel free to use it and waste it simply because we can afford to buy it, because we know we will make profit from selling it. But you know what somebody said to me, and I mentioned that on last night, that's my last line on this one, because it resonates with me about our ability to create reasons, excuses for things that we want to justify. A colleague said to me that, Wuski, I don't know what you're quarreling about. You know, we're in a water drought, Wasco taking water, and on wet fet day, they'll be taking water again for 5 hours. So why not let the fellow bring the water? A lot of people will be able to get a bath.
Me to laugh.
A bath. Folks, well, that's how far we go.
Have you ever been to Wet Fet?
No, I haven't.
I believe you need a bath after the bath.
After the bath, yeah.
So, but I did, during our broadcast, sometime this week, I did run a story on Puerto Rico. They are sending water to homes every 3 days. So every 3 days they send the water, and they have to, this is a current situation, they have to fill up and then ration every 3 days. We also had a story on some residents from Mondidor, and one lady, she was so old, and where she's walking to get the water, which is at a neighbor's house, it's such a far distance from where she lives, and she has to carry it with a bucket. I mean, I feel,
let me give you another statistic about women carrying buckets. It says here, women and children spend 140 million hours collecting fresh water every day.
Women and children, do you know
women
how
and
heavy
children. You ever see fellas going and collect water? Fathers and...
Do you know how heavy a bucket of water is?
Yeah, well, it's women and children.
To send a 10-year-old child to, according to St. Lucian terms, forsake themselves to carry a bucket of water up the hill.
That's the reality. And folks, you know, we have to wake up to these realities. We're lucky. Other people, other countries, Qatar, the Middle East, they have money, but they don't have water. You know, they have to buy water. We can go into the business of collecting rainwater and sell into the Middle East. Dominica is selling water to Saudi Arabia. You know, we could go into the water business, but that does not justify us wasting water simply to have a good time. Wet fet in drought season is wrong, and whoever thought of
Well, technically, this is
arranging
supposed to be
it,
the rainy season.
yeah, it's a pity. It's a pity. But my quip on that one is that, you know, Wetfet was drowned, and now the organizers have to pay back in dry
Well,
cash.
let's move
In
on.
dry cash.
Let's move
Dry
on.
cash. Wetfet get drowned.
Let's move on. We're going to, well, we're on Wetfet, and let's just touch on Wasco. Tomorrow, they will be shutting down
Yes, for 5 hours.
for 5 hours.
They say that they
Mostly
do
in the
know that
northern
it
areas.
will only take 5 hours. But I'm not sure whether they have said which 5 hours. I quite suspect it's going to be early morning, because that is what happened the last time. They did say 48 hours, and they did do it in the 48 hours. And in the early morning, a problem emerged, but they were able to repair it. I think Wasco needs kudos insofar as we're always quick to blame institutions when they don't deliver. And we have often blamed Wasco for not delivering. But in a situation where the dam was closed, and they said, listen, we will bring water back in 48 hours. They did for 98% of St. Lucia, because I know of people living up the Morn and in elevated areas who only got water yesterday, Friday.
No, but you know, sometimes when we put together our reports, it's very hard. Especially when you go to maybe a Wasco conference, it's very hard for us to put together, jam all the information that they give us in like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That's the usual time for a report. And you know, the director, Mr. Hippolyte, he did explain to us that the system, the structure, the pipes, it's so archaic that they're going in blindly, because back then when they designed it, there were no plans like how we have now.
Pipes were buried.
Pipes were, yes. So
And
they
you
don't.
had to remember where the pipe passing under your land.
So as much as St. Lucians want to say Wasco needs to do a better job, I think St. Lucians need to understand that Wasco themselves are going into this blindly, and they're going as they're fixing as they discover, and with the hopes of rerouting and doing something proper in the future. But you know, all of that comes with money and comes with time.
Not only that, but wastage of water is a predominant factor in the whole question of water conservation and water efficiency. In Guyana, I spent 6 years in Guyana, and 75% of the piped water was wasted, because in some places people had to come from so far, and they would just bust the pipe and block it in order to steal water, like people are doing in Nigeria to steal gas. In the case of St. Lucia, we're not that bad, but because our pipes are over 40 and 50 years old, and today we're advanced in terms of people no longer use the iron pipes, which become rusty. But
Rust
then,
is not good
like
for
you
you.
said, a lot of them, people don't know where they are, because there were
They
no
don't know,
plans
'cause there
in
no-
those days.
there's no plans,
and the people who
especially for the
planted them,
city.
like T.R. Sibbles, have died. So this last exercise, for example, from the dam, when they closed it for 2 days, they had to dig up across many streets in order to try to discover, and they did find some, but the whole question of water conservation, in the case of St. Lucia, folks, if you really want to realize how much water can be wasted, if you have a pipe that is leaking at home, put a 5-gallon bucket under it and see how long it will take to fill it, and then do the maths to find out how many 5-gallon buckets you would lose if you leave that little drip of water running for a day, which would explain to you why it is important to be able to keep your taps in order. Because if there are 100 leaking taps, like when you look in your bowl and you see a little part where it's yellow, where the water keeps falling, it might not look like much to you, but overnight it's really a lot.
Yeah, it will fill up. Well, we have to take a break. When we come back, more Press Club with me and Earl Buski.